The top stories tonight in Y News. President Rodrigo Duterte tells the lower chamber of Congress to resolve their impasse and pass the 2021 national budget legally.
House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano apologizes to Senate for his statement that seems to blame the upper chamber if the passage of the proposed national budget for 2021 gets delayed. Senate President Vicente Soto III accepts his apology.
The Department of Health warns of a possible measles outbreak by 2021. That is, if the immunization coverage is not completed this year. Beep and other cards used on public utility vehicles can be acquired for free starting tomorrow, though passengers will still have to buy loads or credit.
Australia's sports minister shrugs off calls to boycott the 2022 Beijing Winter Games.
And a team of scientists from University of Freiburg in Germany establishes the world's largest laboratory collection of mosses of the genus Pagnum, commonly known as peat moss. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, October 8, 2020. I am Jorlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, President Rodrigo Duterte tells lower chamber to resolve their impasse and pass the 2021 national budget legally. Our Malacanang correspondent, Rosa Licos, will join us tonight to give the details why live. Yes, Rosalie.
Harleen, President Rodrigo Duterte, in a surprise public address to the nation this evening, issued an ultimatum to the lower house of Congress. He faced the public earlier together with some of his cabinet members and military and police officials. This is amid the ongoing House Speakership row between the camps of House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano and Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco. The president also asked the lawmakers not to drag him into their issues.
Huwag naman sana ninyong sobrahan ang laro sa Congress na yung budget mismo ang nalagay sa alanganin. I'm just, appealing to you. Yung upo nila dito, hindi sabihin na may balak ako. Gusto ko lang sabihin in one straight statement. Either you resolve the issue sa impasse ninyo dyan and pass the budget legally and constitutionally. Pag hindi ninyo ginawa, ako ang gagawa para sa inyo.
The chief executive said he is not threatening anyone and will not apologize for it. He also pointed out that serving the Filipinos and the country is much more important than what is happening right now in the Congress. The president hopes this will resolve the issues among the members of the House of Representatives. Otherwise, he will do his thing, he said.
I will not apologize for saying this because indeed we are all of the same dream, and that is really by itself and alone it is already an honor. It's a dream fulfilled for any lawyer or any Filipino for that matter to serve his country.
Harleen?
Rosalie, do you think the president will personally meet again House Speaker Cayetano or Marinduque Congressman Velasco?
Harleen, Malacanang thinks President Rodrigo Duterte will no longer meet any one of them after what happened recently, especially with the statements of the president tonight.
Thank you so much, Rosalie Cause, for that report.
Meanwhile, House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano tells his fellow lawmakers that forming a small committee is a faster way to pass the proposed 2021 national budget. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
There were many controversies in the middle of the budget deliberation on the proposed 2021 national budget. That is why the deliberation was cut short last Tuesday and a small committee was formed to handle individual amendments, according to House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano. This was a better action as others are politicking during the budget hearing, he added.
If we continue the budget hearing on the floor, pinupolitika na. No? There are saboteurs, there were people na may sariling mga intensyon, hindi na nakakapag-usap ng mabuti ang mga kongresista at mga departamento. So yung ginawa po namin na to is not a shortcut, it's a better way.
Cayetano said the move was also done last year when they passed the 2020 national budget. There have been calls from lawmakers who want to reopen the session of the House to tackle the budget. Among those who called to open the session is Marinduque Representative Alan J. Velasco, who says politics must be set aside as the budget is far bigger than the fight for speakership. But according to Cayetano, it will be better to let the small committee to do its job.
It will be more expeditious. We will have a better quality budget if we allow the small committee to be able to do its work.
Cayetano explained that all amendments to the budget can be channeled through the small committee.
All the members of Congress will be represented through the 13 because after the Monday meeting, may forms kami per department. They're free to call the departments. The Secretary USEC ASEC assured me that they'll make themselves available. May mga dokumento silang ibibigay.
Speaker Cayetano has also apologized for his statement, which seems to pass on to Senate the fault if the budget passage gets delayed. The House Speaker said the printed forms can be sent earlier and the delay will only be a day. Cayetano also added that the passage of the budget can also be expedited when it comes to the BICAM.
We can make it up lalo sa BICAM. Usually 2 weeks ang BICAM. If we start working on our what we want to do with the budget, how to address people's problems now, until then, mapapaikli natin yung BICAM. Baka 3 days lang, 4 days, matapos po natin yan.
Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Senate President Vicente Soto III has accepted the apology of House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano over the national budget issue. Cayetano went on Facebook Live this afternoon to apologize to Soto and other senators after his remark did not sit well with Soto that should there be a delay or reenactment of budget, it will be because of the Senate and not because of the House of Representatives. Soto earlier said it was unbelievable to pass the blame to them and use the Senate as a scapegoat after the House delayed the budget for a whole month. The House Speaker said there was no intention to criticize or blame the Senate. In a message to reporters, Soto said Cayetano called him up and promised to submit the copies of the General Appropriations Bill on November 5 that the House will approve on third reading once they resume session on November 16. According to Soto, the move will help them, especially Senate Committee on Finance Chair Senator Sonny Angara. The President adds they will do their best to work on the time given to the Senate. Before this, Senator Panfilo Lacson said he also suggested to Cayetano if it's possible for the House to resume their session before November 1 just to approve on third and final reading the budget bill and transmit to the Senate. The lawmaker explains this will enable them to have enough time to study the budget books and start the floor debates immediately after they resume session on November 16. Lacson adds it is the only way to ensure the timely passage of the national budget. For Senator Risa Hontiveros, they will not allow the passage of the budget to be delayed by petty politics.
Meanwhile, Malacanang can ask Congress for a special session in December if the passage of the 2021 national budget gets delayed. According to the palace, the Senate can still continue their budget deliberations at the committee level, although the plenary session in the lower chamber has been suspended. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reveals that if the lawmakers do not have enough time to complete their deliberations on the proposed 2021 national budget, the palace can ask for a special session. This statement came after the palace official said he believes that the suspension of the plenary session until November 16 will not affect the on-time passage of the budget proposal.
Pero kung kinakailangan po talaga, meron naman pong December 14 na adjournment for Christmas ang Kongreso. Kung talagang kinakailangan, after the 14, dun po magpapatawag ng special session. Wala naman pong prejudice yan.
Also, the official refuses to answer the question if House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano is holding the 2021 budget hostage. The House is currently hounded by the speakership row between Cayetano's and Representative Lord Alan Velasco's camps. Meanwhile, Secretary Roque insists that senators can still continue with their budget deliberations at the committee level, although the plenary session in the lower chamber has been suspended.
Bagamat naipasa sa second reading at nag-recess o nag-adjourn ang ating mababang kapulungan, hindi po maaantala ang pagdidinig sa mga komite ng Senado ng ating National Appropriations Bill dahil nadesisyon na po yan ng kataas-taasang hukuman sa kaso ng Tolentino at ng Alvarez.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Deputy Speaker and Presidential son Paolo Duterte refuses to take sides on the House Speakership issue. Congressman Pulong said that Velasco cannot be denied from claiming his right to the speakership based on the term-sharing agreement, but added that it must also be noted that a considerable number of lawmakers continues to support Cayetano. The presidential son refuses to issue any statement that may be in favor or against any of the two camps, as both Cayetano and Velasco are his good friends. But should the time come that a choice must be made on the speakership, Pulong hopes that lawmakers will choose one who is committed, understands the concerns of their constituents, and aims to unify the members of the House of Representatives.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 2,363 new cases were reported today. The National Capital Region logged the most additional cases today with over 800. Now, the country's total confirmed cases as of 4 p.m. today increased to 331,869. The Philippines is placed 19th between Italy and Turkey in this tally. We have lost 144 more patients, but through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 697 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 274,318. Thanks be to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of over 36.1 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignties. That's after more than 271,000 confirmed coronavirus cases were added from yesterday's count. The fast-spreading disease has claimed more than 1.05 million lives, including 4,000 new death cases globally, while over 25.2 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection, thanks be to God. The private sector encourages Filipinos to go out, but emphasizes this must be done while observing health protocols. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why.
A recent social weather station survey shows about 7 out of 10 Filipinos believe that it is risky to go to grocery stores and public markets due to COVID-19 pandemic. With this, a few big companies in the country created and support a campaign that aims to bring back consumer confidence to the public to go to malls, shopping centers, and restaurants, among others, to help revive the economy. Dubbed as Ingat Angat Tayo Lahat, the campaign involves constant reminders of ways on how to safely go and roam around the said public areas.
We've already learned to adapt the safety measures, those minimum health standards. Your habit has already been formed. And that's why the campaign also focuses on reminding you to do that. But it also focuses on encouraging you to go out.
Meanwhile, Testing Czar and Deputy Chief Implementer of the National Action Plan against COVID-19, Secretary Vince Dizon, clarifies that the country's capacity to address the pandemic has already built up. This, he said, led the government to move forward to the next phase of reviving the economy from its initial call to the public to stay at home.
We really have to strike a balance between ensuring that the spread of COVID-19 is controlled, but at the same time, begin the process of reopening the economy, because livelihood is now even more important.
Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque revealed that the sole topic of the full cabinet meeting they have with President Rodrigo Duterte is about how to save the people from poverty. He explains that the consumer confidence plays a vital role in reviving the economy as long as the public will observe the health protocols such as regular hand sanitation and proper use of face mask and face shield.
I think even the most conservative of us in the cabinet and in the IATF now realize that if the economy remains closed, more people will be in poverty. And if more people stay in poverty, we have a social volcano waiting to erupt. And that is why I think the resolution in that meeting will be to allow the economy to open, provided we observe minimum health protocols.
Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III encourages overseas Filipino worker returnees to take advantage of the 30,000 job opportunities being offered by the information technology and business process management industry. Among the vacancies offered are in customer service, technical support, and healthcare. Under the agreement, DOLE will provide IBAP or IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines the list of OFW applicants and their corresponding details, while IBAP will provide DOLE with the list of IT BPM establishments which are part of the program. To be included in the database, OFWs should register at DOLE's tracking system, the OFW Assistance Information System at oasis.owa.gov.ph. IPAP member companies will then reach out to OFW returnees for possible employment opportunities. According to OWA Administrator Hans Leo Kakda, OFWs keep the economy afloat, and they will continue to do so without going out of the country.
8 in every 10 Filipinos approve the Duterte administration's COVID-19 response. That is based on a Pulse Asia survey conducted from September 14 to 20, 2020. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque announced the survey results, which shows that 84% of the respondents approve the government's efforts to control the spread of COVID-19. The government also got high performance ratings when it comes to providing assistance or subsidy to people who have been affected by the pandemic.
We are humbled and we are further inspired to serve the Filipino people in this time of pandemic and crisis. Maraming salamat po.
Meanwhile, Malacanang congratulates Health Secretary Francisco Duque III following his election as chair of the 71st Committee Session of the World Health Organization Western Pacific. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, WHO seems to acknowledge the efforts of the Philippines in battling COVID-19. Health Secretary Duque is currently the country's chairman of the Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19.
Well, our congratulations to Secretary Duque, my classmate in the cabinet. At ito po nagpapatunay na nagtitiwala po ang WHO sa kakayahan ni Secretary Duque.
Malacanang thanks the United Nations Human Rights Council or UNHRC for passing a resolution calling for technical assistance and capacity building for the Philippines' efforts on human rights. The HRC resolution number 45 was adopted in the 45th session in Geneva, Switzerland, urging High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet to provide support for the Philippines in its continued fulfillment of its international human rights obligations and commitments.
We're thankful for the UN Human Rights Council. No? Tama po naman yung kanilang ginawang resolution at nagpapasalamat po kami dahil yan po ay nagpapakita na nagtitiwala pa rin ang UN Human Rights Council sa mga institusyon para mapanagot po ang mga lumalabag sa karapatang pantao ng ating mga kababayan. So we will fully cooperate po with the UN Human Rights System.
The government calls on parents to have their children be immunized against measles. Our health correspondent Aiko Miguel explains why.
The Department of Health warns of a possible measles outbreak by 2021. This if the immunization coverage is not completed this year. Now, the DOH aims to immunize 23% of Filipino children against the highly contagious illness, considering only 67% of Filipino children have been immunized this year. According to National Immunization Program Manager Dr. Maria Wilda Silva, there are 2.4 million Filipino children 5 years old below who are susceptible to the disease. Even polio remains uncontrolled in the Philippines.
Because we have two problems now. High risk for measles outbreak, most of the provinces and cities. A big outbreak is predicted in 2021.
Ang mensahe po ng Presidente, mga magulang, huwag po natin katakutan ang bakuna. Itong bakuna naman po sa measles, isa na ito sa pinakaluma, pinakamaagang ginagamit na natin. Bakit pa po natin i-expose sa abirya ang ating mga minamahal sa buhay na mga chikiting? Samantalang meron naman po tayong tried and proven na bakuna laban dyan. Naintindihan po namin ang takot ninyo sa panahon ng COVID-19 at dahil marami kasi talagang nagkalat ng lagim doon sa mga ibang mga bakuna. Pero itong measles naman po, matagal na pong ginagamit yan. So wala po kayong dapat ikatakot.
The DOH targets to prevent any outbreak just like in 2014 when measles cases reached almost 55,000 and more than 48,000 cases in 2019.
Tells you that your country is the biggest exporter of measles in 2018 to 2019. We want to put a stop on this. That's why it's very critical that we do a quality campaign for 2021 as well as in October 2020 to stop measles from happening in future month and in the next year. And we will not be exporting measles when travel is already allowed.
Phase 1 of the government's supplemental immunization activity against polio, measles, and rubella is set to happen on October 26 until November 25 in 6 regions. In Phase 1, the DOH targets to immunize 4.3 million Filipino children aged 9 to 59 months against measles and 2.1 million Filipino children aged 0 to 59 months against polio.
Phase 2 is set to be conducted in February 2021 in 6 regions including Metro Manila. Because of the existing pandemic, immunization will be in a modified setup in which the DOH will use barangay halls or gyms where parents and children can be vaccinated while strictly observing health protocols like physical distancing. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Several senators support a proposed measure seeking to authorize the president to expedite the processing and issuance of permits and licenses. Senate Majority Leader Miguel Zubiri sponsored in yesterday's session the committee report for Senate Bill number 1844, which aims to give powers to the president to suspend the requirements for national and local permits, licenses, and certifications, and to streamline and expedite its processes in times of national emergency. According to Zubiri, who also authored and sponsored the Ease of Doing Business Act of 2018, it pains to see that bureaucratic red tape still persists in government agencies and local government units while the country is in the middle of a pandemic. He also shared President Duterte's frustration over how this affected the delivery of medical equipment for COVID-19 response and the building of communication sites, which are vital today as the country transitions to new normal. Senators Ramon Revilla, Christopher Bongo, and Ronald De La Rosa also supported the measure, noting its importance on the country's economic recovery. The bill also has a provision that reiterates the power of the president to suspend or remove erring government officials who will be proven involved in corruption.
We echo the President's frustration over the continued red tape and corruption in the country. And with this provision, we will be able to put an end to that, hopefully, Mr. President, once and for all.
Where you see wrongdoing, report it. Where you see opportunistic public officials, file complaints. And we will see that they are held accountable.
The Bayanihan to Recover as One Act temporarily suspends the requirements for the construction of telco sites and internet infrastructure, except for building permit and height clearance permit for a period of 3 years. The Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, earlier noted that over 1,000 permits have been approved by various LGUs across the country for the building of new cell sites.
Beep and other cards used on public utility vehicles can be acquired tomorrow for free, though passengers will still have to buy a load or credit. Joan Nano tells us why.
In compliance with LTFRB's memorandum order released yesterday, some automated fare collection system providers have ceased charging customers for the cost of their cards used on land transportation. These include Beep Card, Beep Ride, Tripco, Squid Pay, and Pearl Card, among others. Although Beep Ride has expressed willingness to comply with the government's order, it says this will be difficult as the company will have to shoulder the entire production cost of cards. Meanwhile, the Senate Employees Transport Service Cooperative, or SETSCO, the operator of Pearl Cards, appealed to the government to subsidize their cards. The group also complains that they were not consulted about the LTFRB's decision.
Baka naman po may paraan din po ang DOTR, lalo na kami ay isang primary co-op lamang. Baka pwede pong mabigyan kami ng subsidiya. Madalian po kasi yung pagpapasya din po and alam naman natin po yung sitwasyon po natin ngayon, talaga ang hirap po yung face to face, magkonsulta o kahit po dito na ganito na nga po yung natin digital. To be very honest, hindi po kami nakonsulta.
On the other hand, Squid Pay says it welcomes LTFRB's order. Squid Pay card can be available for free, but passengers should first acquire a 55 peso deposit, which is refundable.
Kapag binalik yung card nung user, pwede po namin ibalik yung 55 pesos as long as hindi pa nila to kasi meron kaming option for you to own the card. So kung purchase mo siya as your ASTS card or Squid card na merong pangalan, etc., yun hindi na siya pwedeng ma-refund.
LTFRB Chairman Martin Dalga reiterates AFCS providers were consulted prior to the release of their memorandum circular and that the government was able to find out that some providers can give the cards for free to the riding public.
Wala man talagang budget yung LTFRB. Huwag na natin ipapasa dun sa commuter yung issue about the cost, no? And the way I started the conversation here is we need to understand where the cost is coming from. The cost is coming from the one providing the service. And then when we clarify that with them, pwede palang ilibre. So ang tanong ngayon, bakit hindi pwede?
AFCS who will fail to comply with the government's directive will be penalized or suspended, the LTFRB warns. Johanano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Now, here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. Ready your umbrellas, Kasangbahay. A low-pressure area or LPA and the southwest monsoon or hanging habagat are affecting parts of the country. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 3 p.m. today, the LPA was located 85 kilometers west-southwest of Calapan City, Oriental, Mindoro. The LPA and the southwest monsoon will bring cloudy skies with scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over Metro Manila, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Bicol Region, Visayas, and Mindanao. Meanwhile, Ilocos Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Cagayan Valley will experience partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated light rains due to the northeasterly surface wind flow. Take extra precautions because possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms. No tropical cyclone advisory is issued.
There's no more karaoke and videoke singing in Manila City during daytime after complaints from parents of students whose online classes were disturbed by neighbors who use karaoke machines. Manila City Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso signed an ordinance banning daytime videoke and karaoke in Manila, including other sound-producing devices disturbing the community. The 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. ban is implemented Monday to Saturday as classes have resumed. Ordinance number 8688 was signed together with City Council Majority Floor Leader Joel Chua and Vice Mayor Hani Lacuna Pangan. First-time offenders shall pay a fine of 1,000 pesos. Second-time offenders will be fined 2,000 pesos. Violating the ordinance for the third and succeeding instances will be fined 3,000 pesos. All barangay officials and police officers are tasked to implement the ordinance. In Cebu City, a similar ban has taken effect so that pupils won't be disturbed while studying, according to Cebu City Mayor Edgardo Labella.
The Department of Education will have to adjust learners' school activities now that distance learning is implemented. Dante Amento tells us why live. Yes, Dante?
Harleen, the Department of Education continues to monitor and assess the implementation of distance learning in different parts of the country. Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction Diosdado San Antonio says he has observed some activities burden the students as he visited some households or areas. Parents also have complained of too much workload or performance tasks given to their children even on the opening of the class. Thus, USEC San Antonio discloses that it has the need for them to recalibrate or make necessary adjustment for the students' workload or homework activities.
Parang overwhelming yata yung mga naibigay na mga gagawin ng bata. So, kailangan ding mag-recalibrate kami o mag-adjust na siguruhin na ang mga pinapagawa namin sa mga nag-aaral habang nasa bahay ay yung makatwiran at hindi naman sobra-sobra.
Antonio adds, it is now one of their challenges that needs immediate solution in order not to affect the student studies. Meanwhile, to lessen the workload both by the teachers and students, DepEd has removed the periodical or quarterly exams in its interim guidelines for assessment and grading of students in this adjustment period of new system in the country. Assessment or grading system focuses on written works and performance tasks instead.
In-encourage natin yung mga bata na parang magde-develop din sila ng mga learning portfolios. Ito yung mga parang koleksyon ng mga ebidensya ng kanilang mga naunawaan, na natutunan at mga kasanayang na-develop din habang nag-aaral.
Back to you, Harleen.
Dante, in connection with the burden that the students are now experiencing, what is DepEd's reaction to the report of a certain student in South Cotabato allegedly committed suicide due to difficulties in using the self-learning modules?
Yes, Harleen, DepEd has belied that report. Director June Godoy of DepEd's Public Information Office says the modules are not the reason why the student committed suicide based on the investigation. Before the pandemic, the student had prior personal issues based on the testimonies of relatives, and module was never mentioned as reason by the student. Godoy adds the module is not, or in question, was also a group project. No undue pressure or was exerted by the teacher nor the school administration regarding the deadline or submission of school requirements. Early.
Thank you so much, Dante Amento, for that report.
And for the news abroad, here's Maria Latosa reporting live from Perth, Australia.
William, here in Australia, Sports Minister Richard Colbeck has shrugged off demands for boycotting the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics due to concerns about human rights abuses in China, specifically in the Xinjiang region where the Uyghur people live. He gave signals that the government would not push Australian athletes to abandon the event despite rising issues regarding Beijing's treatment to ethnic minorities. In a statement on Wednesday, he said that it is not the government but the Independent Australian Olympic Committee who are responsible for sending teams to Winter and Summer Olympic Games. He also added that he shares the same instincts with the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab for keeping diplomacy separate from sports. However, the UK Secretary specified that there might be possibilities that these two issues would not be able to be separated in the future. The UK Foreign Secretary also stated that he was considering imposing economic sanctions on the officials that are responsible to the repression issues. His warning generated a growing alliance of now nearly 40 countries, including Australia, at the UN Human Rights on Tuesday to voice grave concerns about gross human rights violations to the Uyghur people and to be granted an immediate, meaningful and unfettered access to Xinjiang for independent observers. Mr. Raab said that the more they see of the evidence and the more the international community addresses its mind to it, the more he thinks that they do need to think very carefully at what action they would take. Independent Senator Rex Patrick also said a few months ago that China was guilty of several cases of abuse, including the genocide of Uyghur people, suppression of freedom in Hong Kong, and the latest issue regarding Australians being imprisoned on Trump charges. The independent senator asked the sports minister, how can the government morally support Australian participation in the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing? Sports Minister Colbeck said that he remains deeply concerned with the reports of enforced disappearance, mass detention, forced labor, and pervasive surveillance of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. The sports minister also mentioned that Australia's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Marise Payne, had already raised concerns about the treatment of Muslim minorities in China. In a speech to the UN Human Rights Council last month, the Australian Foreign Minister raised the issues regarding Xinjiang and Hong Kong, which garnered comments from the Chinese embassy. Australia was called on by Chinese diplomats to address its own human rights problems in the first place. New polling by PEW Research Center published on Wednesday indicated that Australia's negative views of China had escalated sharply over the past year, which is reflected by deteriorating Sino-Australian ties. According to the poll, 81% or about 4 in 5 respondents in Australia have an unfavorable perception towards China, which was the biggest increase from among the 14 advanced economies surveyed. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris faced off in the first and only 2020 vice presidential debate moderated by USA Today's Susan Page in front of a small audience of people wearing face masks. The first topic of the debate was the novel coronavirus and the U.S. response and death toll, coming less than a week after President Trump announced that he tested positive. The debate ended with a civil tone. Sonny Cos explains why.
The U.S. vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris ended civil compared with the first presidential debate. Senator Harris did not waste time to attack the pandemic track record of the administration. According to the senator, Trump was not transparent from the very beginning of the pandemic. He made wearing masks political and does not believe in the science of the pandemic.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
The Democratic vice presidential candidate also said Trump does not believe in the science of climate change. She also blamed the Trump administration from removing the country from the Paris Climate Accord, Iran anti-nuclear deal, diplomatic and trade dispute against China, even mocking U.S. allies in NATO and Europe for losing U.S. global leadership status. The lawmaker also denied the accusations made by the vice president that her ticket would increase taxes for all Americans and that they would end oil fracking and even fossil fuel in the country. She also slammed the current administration for trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act and the president for only paying $750 in taxes. Vice President Pence, on the other hand, pressed the lady senator for being one of the authors of the Green New Deal being raised by some Democratic legislators and that this plan would take away thousands of oil jobs from the country. He also took pride in the economic growth of the country before the pandemic. The CARES Act signed by President Trump that helped millions of unemployed Americans and the light speed development of COVID-19 vaccine. He was also fast in countering Harris regarding the $750 tax payment by the president. He said that Biden, on the other hand, would increase taxes to all Americans on his first day in office. Overall, even if there was some sparring and talking over each other between the two candidates, policy platforms were discussed more with clarity in the vice presidential debate. Sonny Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Australia's foreign aid program pours an extra 305 million Australian dollars. This comes amid growing competition with China for geographic influence. Joining us tonight is one of our fellow correspondents here in Australia, Marvy Delphine, to tell us why live. Yes, Marvy.
Marielle, amid growing competition for geographic influence with China, Australia will establish a new $304.7 million COVID-19 recovery fund for Pacific Step-Up neighbors to be spent over the next 2 years. Foreign Minister Marise Payne said it will help address the economic and social cost of the pandemic in the Pacific and Timor-Leste, helping to underpin our region's stability and economic recovery. Aid organizations welcomed the one-off cash injection, but said it does not technically count as foreign aid, as this leaves Australia's Overseas Development Assistance, or ODA, contribution at $4 billion, which is down by $44 million from last year. This new official aid budget is just 0.21% of the country's gross national income, the smallest it's ever been. Foreign policy think tank Lowy Institute's latest Pacific Aid map, though, confirms Australia's status as the largest individual donor to the region, providing $12.31 billion to Pacific countries over the past decade, compared to China's $2.4 billion. But its share has slipped from 51% in 2010 to 32% in 2018. On the other hand, refugee advocates have slammed the Morrison government for reducing the number of people allowed into the country for humanitarian reasons by more than a quarter. Marielle?
Marvy, in previous years, the Aussie government's Pacific Step-Up policy has protected the region from aid cuts. Is that still the case now?
Yes, Marielle, that is still largely the case. Papua New Guinea remains the largest recipient of Australian aid with $596 million. In the Pacific, Solomon Islands is next in the donor list with $157 million. Also, aid programs to Vanuatu, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, and Kiribati have been increased. But according to Mr. Jonathan Pryke, director of the Lowy Institute's Pacific Islands program, the ongoing Pacific focus of Australian aid will be welcomed in the region. But Pacific leaders are really waiting for the return of Australian tourists to reboot their battered economies. Director Pryke added, the bigger prize is to just get these borders back open as quickly as possible with Australia and New Zealand. Marielle?
All right, Marvy, thank you for that report, live from Perth, Australia. Singapore plans to negotiate two-way air travel bubbles with safe countries that have low rates of COVID-19. From Singapore, Roy Cheka will join us tonight live. Yes, Roy.
Marielle, in another effort to revive its tourism industry and bring back jobs, Singapore plans to allow a controlled amount of travelers to enter or exit the country. Singapore is quickly getting back up on its feet with plans to arrange air travel bubbles with countries abroad. On top of unilaterally lifting its borders towards other countries, the coming air travel bubbles will allow two-way traveling between regions. The travel bubbles will of course be established with safe regions that have low rates of COVID-19 and have comprehensive safety measures in place. In order to manage the quota, travelers would need to apply for air travel passes before their journeys. This is especially for managing the number of arrivals in Singapore should the epidemic situation change. Singapore expects the number of travelers to rise steadily and hopes to lift border restrictions to more countries and regions deemed safe in the future. Marielle?
Roy, can you give us an update on COVID cases there in Singapore?
Yes, Marielle, there are currently 189 active cases here in Singapore as of 7th October yesterday. Recent reported the cases were mostly imported or locally transmitted in dormitories, and little to no infections were reported in the community. Marielle?
Thank you, Roy Cheka, reporting live from Singapore. Australia's Department of Home Affairs announced a demonstrated English language skills will be required from all partner visa applicants starting late 2021 before they can apply for a permanent resident visa of the country. Early Briones will join us reporting from Sydney, New South Wales live. Yes, Early.
Yes, Marielle. Further details have been shared by Acting Immigration Minister Alan Tudge about Australia's upcoming changes to partner visa applications. Acting Minister Alan Tudge has clarified that applicants will not be required to pass the English test before arriving in Australia under a 2-year provisional visa, but instead, the requirement to demonstrate functional English skills or at least proof of genuine attempt to learn the English language before they apply for a permanent resident visa is needed. A genuine attempt would be considered if the applicant has completed 500 hours of free English class through the Adult Migration English Program or AMEP. This is fully funded by the Australian government for eligible migrants and humanitarian entrants. Prime Minister Scott Morrison fully supported the change that will take effect late 2021 and does not think it is unreasonable as it is not stopping any applicant from coming to Australia. The Prime Minister also recognized that the lack of English capability can possibly lead to more people being put into vulnerable positions in workplaces, homes, or domestic situations. Prime Minister Morrison stressed the point that the change is pro-migrants, and more importantly, it's also pro-Australians. The cap on partner visa this financial year of 2020 to 2021 has been increased from 47,000 to 72,300, with priority to be given to onshore applicants, with partners living in the regional area of the country. Marielle?
Earl, what are the eligibility requirements of the Adult Migration English Program or AMEP?
Marielle, an adult may be able to learn English with the Adult Migration English Program if he or she is a permanent resident of Australia or holds an eligible temporary visa and knows a little English or not at all. In addition, the following timeframes must be met from the date of visa commencement or arrival in Australia to remain eligible. Firstly, register with an Adult Migration English Program or AMEP service provider within 6 months or 12 months if the applicant is under 18 years of age at the time of registration. Next is commence AMEP classes within 12 months. Lastly, complete the AMEP within 5 years. Marielle?
Thank you, Early Briones, reporting live from Sydney, New South Wales. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Australia and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Mariela Toza, reporting live from Perth, Australia.
A team of scientists in Germany creates the world's largest laboratory collection of mosses of the genus Sphagnum. Jovic Bermas will tell us why.
In a bid to maintain enough supply of peat moss through sustainable and economic ways, a team of scientists from University of Freiburg in Germany has established the world's largest laboratory collection of mosses of the genus Sphagnum, commonly known as peat moss. Peatlands, which store 30% of the Earth's soil carbon and are critical for preserving biodiversity and providing safe drinking water, are deteriorating more rapidly than ever due to climate change and the resulting droughts and higher temperatures. Named as Project Mosset, the scientists, in collaboration with researchers from the University of Greifswald, collected spore capsules of mosses, 19 sphagnum species of which came from Austria, Germany, Latvia, Russia, Sweden, and the Netherlands. Founded in 2010, led by plant biotechnologist Professor Ralph Reschke at the University of Freiburg, this world's largest collection of moss, cultured in an environment free from contaminants, bacteria, fungi, algae, or such like, is now housed in the International Moss Stock Center, or IMSC. Published in the journal Neophytologist, the scientists managed to grow this species 50 to 100 times faster in a laboratory than in a moor landscape, using nutrient-rich liquid mediums known as suspension cultures. This dire need for peat, usually harvested on a large scale for growing vegetables and ornamental plants in greenhouses and home gardens, motivated the researchers to replace it with renewable biomass. However, in order to produce huge amount of founder material, Reschke and his team at the IMSC distribute lab strains of peat mosses to various research institutes with active bioreactors. Jovic Bermas, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, October 8, 2020. I am Horidin Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.